The unsung heroes of World War II, not as glamorous as fighter planes, not as sturdy as the heavy bombers, but cheap and numerous, built for one reason, to carry the troops as cheaply and effectively as possible. These were the military gliders. Today we will talk about the two most numerous and famous gliders the Allies used in World War II, the Waco CG-4 and the British Airspeed Horsa. So without further ado, let's begin. The roots of the Allied gliders reach back to the early 1930s. The militaries around the world used gliders well before World War II, but their main purpose was the training of young pilots. But during the 1930s, both in Germany and in the Soviet Union, designers experimented with bigger cargo gliders. While the Germans built many gliders, their combat use was not considered seriously, until a Luftwaffe officer, Kurt Student, visited Moscow and saw a large parachute and glider operation. They started designing purpose-built assault gliders to carry the troops, and the most successful of these early designs was the DFS-230, which first flew in 1937. This glider could carry 9 men, and it saw heavy use in the first part of World War II. Later bigger, heavier designs followed, like the GO-242, which was able to carry 23 troops. And finally the Messerschmitt Me-321, which could carry 130 men, or even medium tanks. I have already made a video about the Me-321 Gigant, so if you're interested in the history of that plane, check it out. They were all used in numerous operations, but for our story here the most important is the combat use of the DFS-230 as an assault glider during the siege of Ebenheim Fortress in May 1940. The German forces used 41 gliders to carry their troops to different targets, and the assault was surprisingly effective. This was the event that ignited the interest in military gliders in the Allied countries, as the effectiveness of them was surprising at that time. In the United Kingdom, the information about the successful German use of the assault gliders led to the creation of the British Airborne Division, and it was decided the gliders should be incorporated in the force from the beginning. The first glider developed to specification X-2240 was the General Aircraft Hotspur. It was very much inspired by the German DFS-230 and was able to carry 8 men. But soon it was decided a glider with more cargo capacity would be needed, so the number of gliders and towing aircrafts needed for an operation can be reduced. Also, landing troops in larger numbers is safer than landing them in smaller, scattered groups. So in October 1940, new specifications were set for a larger 25-seat combat glider. This was the aircraft that later became the Airspeed Horsa. The Mark I version of the glider had side loading doors, and it was planned the paratroopers can jump from it on both sides, and also featured a loading door on the side just behind the cockpit. Though in theory it was able to carry a jeep, the awkward loading door placement basically prevented this. Later it was decided it's better if the gliders land and unload the troops, so the Mark II version was redesigned to solve the loading and unloading problem. It featured a new nose that could be swung to the side, allowing to load bigger cargo from the front. The fuselage was built in 3 sections and bolted together. The tail section was designed to be detachable after landing to help with quick unloading. This was first designed to be done by using explosives, but was found too dangerous, so it was changed to quick release bolts. There was a bomber version planned as well, with a payload of 8,000 pounds, but that was later abandoned as over time more bombers became available. When on tow, the gliders initially used a phone line to communicate with the towing aircraft, but later they were all equipped with radios, so the phone line was not needed anymore. In February 1941, an order for the first 400 units were placed, and the glider made its maiden flight in September the same year. The large-scale production started in early 1942, including manufacturers like Austin Motors and several furniture manufacturing companies. Because these companies had no airfields to store the completed gliders, the final assembly was done by RAF maintenance units. The Horsa was able to carry 30 fully equipped troops, or 2 jeeps, or a 6-pounder gun. 3,799 units were built before the end of production. From that, 2,238 were Mark I models, and 1,561 were Mark 2s. Not far behind the British, in February 1941, the US Army Air Force also set out specifications for a new combat glider, based on the information learned about the German assault on Fort Ebenheimel. The specifications asked for different sized gliders, with the ability to carry 2, 8, or 15 men. 4 companies entered their designs: the Frankfurt Sailplane Company, the Waco Aircraft Company, the St. Louis Aircraft Corporation, and Bolus Sailplanes. But from the 4 companies, only Waco was able to deliver the required prototypes in time. Their 2 initial designs were the XCG-3, with the capacity to carry 8 men, and they also worked on the larger XCG-4, which could carry 15 men. Though initially the Army Air Force ordered the smaller CG-3A version into production, not much later, similarly to the British, they realized that the 9-man capacity would be too small, so most of the CG-3 orders were cancelled in favor of the bigger model, the CG-4A, which was well under development. The test flights of the new glider began in May 1942 and were concluded without incidents. Only minor changes on the rudder and fin were needed. The need for the new gliders was so big that testing and evaluation was done in an accelerated pace. The Waco CG-4 had a metal and wood frame with fabric covering, and was able to carry 15 men, or a jeep, or a 75mm howitzer. The Allied troops usually preferred the Waco gliders because of their metal frame, as they could withstand the sometimes harsh landings under combat conditions much better than other all-wood gliders. For the ease of loading, the entire nose section of the glider could be swung upwards, so a jeep can easily be loaded into the glider. The designers actually came up with a simple but effective idea for unloading the jeep as well. A cable was attached to the vehicle, and after landing it simply drove forward inside the glider, lifting the nose section with the attached cable and pushing the ramp down itself. Similarly to the British counterpart, the American design first used a telephone line for communication between the towing aircraft and the glider, which was later abandoned when all gliders were equipped with radio equipment. The Waco CG-4 is one of the most numerous between World War II aircrafts, with 13,903 units built. Only a few other aircraft was made in higher numbers during World War II. Now let's see the technical specifications of these gliders. The Airspeed Horsa was 67 feet long, with a wingspan of 88 feet. Its empty weight was 8,370 pounds, and its maximum takeoff weight was 15,750 pounds. It had a tow speed of 160 miles an hour and a glide speed of around 100 miles an hour. It could carry 28 troops, or 2 jeeps, or a howitzer plus its ammunition. The Waco CG-4 was 48 feet 8 inches long, with a wingspan of 83 feet 8 inches. It had an empty weight of 3,900 pounds and a maximum takeoff weight of 7,500 pounds. The maximum towing speed was 150 miles an hour, and its gliding speed was around 75 miles an hour. The glider's usual load was 13 troops, or a jeep, or a 75mm howitzer with its crew. The British Airspeed Horsa was first used in November 1942 in a raid against a heavy water plant in Norway, but this operation was unsuccessful due to bad weather. Their next opportunity came in July 1943, when 27 of them, which were transported to North Africa, participated in the Allied invasion of Sicily. Their biggest deployment came during the invasion of Normandy. Several hundreds of them were used in this operation. They proved to be very effective and were used in every larger airborne operation after that, including Operation Dragoon, the Allied invasion of southern France, and in Operation Market Garden. Their last operation was during Operation Varsity in March 1945, during the Rhine crossings, where 440 Horsas were involved. The American CG-4A gliders had a similar combat record. They first participated in the invasion of Sicily, flying from North Africa across the Mediterranean. They also participated en masse in the Normandy landings and later in Operation Market Garden. Being a cheap and disposable aircraft made them a good choice to deliver supplies to the partisans in Yugoslavia. The CG-4s also participated in operations in the Pacific, but never in large numbers. The last glider operation of the war happened in this theater though in June 1945, when 6 CG-4A and 1 CG-13 glider were used in an air assault against an airfield in Luzon. Though the gliders are not as fast or glamorous or exciting as the fighter planes, they were built cheap and in big numbers, and their participation in some of the biggest operations during World War II was a great help in the war effort. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please leave a like, subscribe to my channel, and in the comments let me know if there's any interesting events or vehicles you'd like to see.